You would be shocked at the amount of opposition that was mounted against this bill. Our allies were gathering at the back mic ready to kill this bill. Then she nuked it herself. The fact that we have not ceded any ground and we continue to succeed, I think is really getting under their skin, but it's also something that they have no other choice but to look at and think these people are doing something right.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the flow safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Texans for Vaccine Choice Shot Callers. I'm Rebecca Hardy, the current president, and today I'm joined by Michelle Evans, the TFEC political director, and we are going to talk all things the 89th legislative session, the one that just wrapped up a week ago, and kind of give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything else in between. So welcome, and it's good to see you this morning, Michelle.
Good to see you. And there was a lot in every category, good, bad, and ugly. So let's jump in.
Yes, let's do. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with some of the good bills, or do you want to talk about some of the events we did during session?
Well, let's start with how we kicked off the session, which was our 10th birthday freedom fight and rally. And then we had a little bit of a birthday party inside the Capitol. As is always the case, the devil derailment plan was in play. We had a nice little thunderstorm come through Austin at the exact time of our outdoor rally. So we made a quick adjustment and went inside the Capitol to have our little party inside. We had a record number of legislators who attended to say hello or to speak to the audience and just kind of connect with all of our supporters and celebrate our 10th birthday with us.
It was a really great day, despite the rain. The rain tried to derail us, but hi, have you met Texans for Vaccine Choice? A little rain is not going to spoil a party. And so it was a great rally. I mean, yes, it was a little bit of we had to do a lot of in real time pivoting, but everybody had a good attitude and a happy heart about it. So we were very thankful. And honestly, I think everybody was far more comfortable inside. So it made for a more intimate, even though there were hundreds of people there, it was somehow still intimate of an event. And it was great to hear from Congressman Chip Roy spoke. And why didn't you talk about some of the other speakers?
So we had, like you said, Congressman Chip Roy, Senator Lois Kolkhorst, Representative Mitch Little, Representative Andy Hopper delivered the invocation. And now I'm blanking on other representatives who spoke.
Shelley Luther.
Shelley Luther, yes, obviously, medical liberty champion from the beginning. And then we did kind of tease the documentary that we premiered later in session. So documentarian Nikki Willis spoke as well. So, and Sarah Gonzalez, an OG TFEC volunteer, supporter, advocate, and just ride or die woman. So that was great to see her. It all came kind of full circle with her presence.
For sure. That was kind of the cherry on top to a really great day. And then
she moderated a legislative panel featuring Representative Cody Vasut, Representative Nate Schatzline, Representative Tom Oliverson, and Representative Steve Toth, which was a great opportunity to kind of flesh out what we were hoping to get during the 89th legislative session, what has kind of impeded our progress in the past, and what they were optimistic about for this current session.
That's right. And then we also had a little, like you said, we had a birthday party. We celebrated Texans for Vaccine Choice 10th birthday. It was really cool. Collins Street Bakery donated the cake and the cookies, and that was just a tremendous blessing. So if you're listening, thank you, Thomas McNutt et al. Over at Collins Street Bakery for making our party happen at the Capitol. And that was just really cool to kind of recap our 10 years of fighting tyranny. And just for anybody kind of that's new to the TFEC movement, we are 10 years old and we have a 100% perfect record of defeating every bad bill. This legislative session, we maintained that record, but I don't want to steal the headline there. But we have defeated every bad bill. And what's great in these post-COVID sessions that we're seeing is that the conversation has definitely moved more into the mainstream. And we've been able to get some standalone protective legislation fully passed in the last couple of sessions. So that's really exciting. So there was a lot to celebrate, that we aren't just stopping bad bills, even though that's very important, but we're now kind of advancing the line and taking back some lost ground.
And going into the 89th legislative session, we truly had no idea what to expect. We didn't know if coming off of the 88th, where we passed 5 standalone bills, whether we were going to be a victim of our own success, whether people had kind of gotten over the whole COVID stuff and are, if they've moved on to different things. We had a new speaker, so that threw a wrench in the plans because we just didn't have any context about how he would behave as a speaker and who he would put into leadership positions and how that would impact our progress. But like Rebecca said, we maintained our winning streak of killing all the bad bills. And what made it so much sweeter this session is the way in which one of our bad bills died. So I want to talk about that real quick. House Bill 1787, by long time tyrant, Representative Donna Howard, a constant thorn in our side, would have mandated that higher education campuses throughout Texas promote the Gardasil vaccine as part of an HPV education and prevention plan across the state. We stood alone in opposition to that bill. We were the only people to speak against it. And we only spoke against it because it provides an avenue for the state to be a de facto marketing agency for a product that has a monopoly on the market. So it's just a bad idea in general. And it's not a great idea to focus on that as the means of prevention instead of, early detection and other prevention techniques.
Yeah,
So,
I want to unpack that just a little bit to just drive the point home. This would have used Texas tax dollars to advertise for Merck's Gardasil. This is the opposite of the proper role of government. And, we can debate the safety and efficacy of this vaccine all day long, but it's really just comes down to it was a fiscal bill and it was a proper role of government bill as well, for sure. So right. Go ahead.
So, we've opposed it last session when she brought it forward and it got through committee, did not get to the floor. But this session, it got through committee and it got to the floor. So we prepared ahead of time. We had representatives ready to do floor speeches, amendments, and ultimately a point of order to kill the bill if needed. But what wound up happening is that Representative Howard took to the front mic, and I was luckily in the gallery to witness this in person. She opened up her folder and I immediately saw that she had our one pager in her folder across from her speech. So I knew there was something great was coming. She was fit to be tied. I mean, you could tell just by her body language, by her tone, she was extremely frustrated. She was almost borderline angry, waving our one pager in the air, calling it misinformation. And, in the meantime, our allies were gathering at the back mic ready to kill this bill. Then she nuked it herself. So, procedurally, like there's no way to actually withdraw your bill or kill your bill on the floor once it gets to the floor. What a representative would have to do is just postpone it into a time in the future that is well beyond session. And ultimately, that's what she did. She pulled out her little red card and said, with that, after this great speech about how amazing our organization is, she said she was going to postpone it until, 10 years from now or something like that, which killed the bill. It was so amazing. It was like you said earlier, a cherry on top. It was chef's kiss. So great to see in person.
And Michelle, I was watching, you were in the gallery. I was watching the live feed from home and we were texting and I was like, she is spiraling. Like I
Yeah,
have never seen a state representative do such a epic spin out.
right.
My, I felt almost bad for her if it hadn't been for such a horrible bill. But
And she started off by accepting her title as the reigning queen of
of
the
tyranny.
tyrants.
Yeah.
So it's so amazing.
What was also striking is how she kept on waving that one pager, complaining about how effective we've been
Yeah,
educating the House on this bad bill. And I remember texting you, tell us more about how effective we've been
right.
blanketing that building, educating the representatives on this bill. So, like you said, chef's kiss. It was just we don't toot our own horns around here very often, but that is definitely a little notch in the belt because it was an epic moment. Okay,
And
so go
that
on.
was kind of a running theme too. So if you recall during the House Public Health Committee hearing on HB 1586, Representative Ann Johnson, who's also been a member of our tyranny squad, she also noted from the dais about how effective TFBC has been in its 10 years of existence. And so these people who are on the wrong side of our issue are truly in awe, I guess, of the advancements that we've been able to make in the last 10 years. The fact that we have not ceded any ground and we continue to succeed, I think, is really getting under their skin. But it's also something that they have no other choice but to like look at and think like these people are doing something right. It may not be something that they agree with, but we have a formula and we use it well.
That's right. That's right. For sure. Well, since we're on the topic of that one bad bill, were there
Mm-hmm.
unpack a little bit more about the other bad bills? How many bad bills were filed? What other ones got traction? And what was the end result of those?
I think we had less than a dozen bad bills. I mean, when you take into account the duplicitous, oh, wow, um, how some of them had duplicates on each chamber, I think it wound up being maybe 5 or 6 actual standalone bills. The other quote unquote bad bill, the one that we opposed that got some traction, was House Bill 3540. Again, a bill that we opposed in the 2023 session. And that is basically expanding and making permanent the PrEP Act authorization. So currently under the PrEP Act, which we found out during this process this year, was extended until what, 2030 or something insane like that.
Crazy. Yeah.
Um, Pharmacists are allowed to administer COVID and flu vaccines to children as young as 3 without a prescription or a physician's order, just those vaccines. The House Bill 3540 by Representative Sam Harless would have expanded that to almost any vaccine, routine childhood vaccine for any age, without any physician oversight, without any physician communication, without any follow up, without any proper training. It was just a bad idea. And people kind of scratch their heads like, why are you opposing access? Isn't this part of choice? There's no mandate. Correct. There is no mandate within this bill. However, we like to see informed consent. We want to see guardrails, proper guardrails in place if people are going to have access. For example, if there's going to be a vaccine clinic at a school, there need to be guardrails put into place so that these children are protected and the informed consent of the parent is protected. You don't have true informed consent if a pharmacy tech who's never even heard of VAERS and has never been trained on how to recognize vaccine injury is able to vaccinate your 3-year-old. It's
Yeah.
absent of full informed consent. So we opposed that bill. It did make it through committee, but it passed through the House and it died in the Senate, a quiet death. But
That's right.
that was kind of the best case scenario after passing the House, is just don't let the Senate have a hearing on it. And that's how it worked out.
That's right. I think the other thing you briefly mentioned about this bill is that would have empowered pharmacists to delegate these vaccination duties to a pharmacy tech. And that just gives me such laughter, because one of my jobs in high school and college was a pharmacy technician in Central Texas. And let me tell you, as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, I would have had no business doing any of that. There was no training. There was no nothing. I am just horrified at the thought of even getting that responsibility had I been told I needed to do that. Like, I mean, that was even before I woke up to the, vaccine issue, but I still would have been like, what are you doing here? These are just, for the most part, just like high school kids. Like, please, like, we do not generally oppose access to vaccination, but that bill just obliterated all safety guardrails, like you said. So not only did two bad bills, the two bad bills that gained traction, we killed them, but all those other ones that simply just died on the vine, those are also dead completely until the next session. So, like I said, we have maintained our perfect record of killing bad bills, and one epically killed. So that was just great. So why don't we pivot to the good news, some good bills?
Yes. We actually passed 6 standalone bills, 7 if you count this additional Senate bill that was more focused on parental rights and education. And part of that is informing parents every single year what their rights are with regard to vaccinations required for school entry, exemptions, etc. So we did support that bill, but it was not actively supporting. We didn't testify. We didn't send out action alerts. The funny thing about that bill, and this was SB 12 by Senator Brandon Creighton, carried by Chairman Jeff Leach in the House. When it hit the House floor, Representative Chris Turner, who is a Democrat out of Tarrant County, I believe, multiple amendments were attempted on this bill, but this particular amendment had nothing to do with the parental rights in education with regard to immunization, but prohibiting specific types of groups on school campuses.
Like clubs?
Clubs, yes.
Okay.
And so his amendment was to also prohibit groups that promote anti-vaccination theory. That, I was, as you know, I go to sleep very, very early, but I woke up the next morning to text messages that were coming through at like 11:30 from staffers, from people who work alongside us, who were wondering, like, are you watching the House floor right now? So I had to go back and watch the live feed, and it really was hilarious. I mean, this exchange that he had with one of his colleagues, another Democrat out of Houston, Jean Wu, who, I mean, they just were talking about, like, well, if you're going to prohibit this group, then you need to prohibit these groups because they're dangerous, and the, COVID deaths and measles. It was just every single worn out talking point was rehashed during that back and forth. The amendment died, thankfully, but it kind of tapped us into a new idea. Like, do we need to be on school campuses to educate people about their rights? Like, who's going to run these clubs? Let's think about this.
Yeah. Well, we both have some teenagers. Yeah. Let's start some medical liberty, little medical liberty fighters in training clubs on campuses. That's great.
I can only imagine how that will go down in my school district, but yes. Good idea in theory. Thank you, Representative Turner, for bringing that idea forward. So the other 6 bills that passed that we supported, of course, House Bill 1586, which I think is getting the most attention nationwide. That is a long time TFEC priority, which is to streamline and simplify the process for exempting your kids or yourself from a vaccination requirement. So currently, the process is pretty onerous. It's unscientific. And like I said, during the hearing, it's completely irrational. So you go online to the Department of State Health Services website, you put in your personal information, your child's information, and you click request, and you can request up to 5 forms. The Department of State Health Services then has, 2 full-time employees and sometimes auxiliary staff during peak times of the year who put together a packet. They print out your exemption form on this thick cardstock paper with a specialty seal, and it's numbered. And then they send the forms along with this packet of information about how you're making such a bad decision for not vaccinating your child. They send it in an 11 by 13 envelope to your home, takes 3, 4, sometimes more weeks. And so in the meantime, you're waiting. And because technically they're not allowed to store any of your personal information, though why is the form numbered? You can't call and follow up to see, are you tracking this? Did you send it out? I still haven't received it. And so you have to order more forms. And it's stupid if
And
I'm
let's
being
be clear.
completely honest.
Well, and also this, my forms never showed up is a phone call we get all the time. Like, what do I do if my forms never showed up? And the only recourse they have is to request again and start the whole timeline all over again. And even the little confirmation screen that pops up after you hit submit to request your affidavit, the confirmation screen even says, if you don't get your forms, come back again. I mean, they're admitting that this is an actual problem, and it just causes so many downstream consequences.
And remind me, when you get that confirmation screen, it's been a while since I've ordered, but when you get that confirmation screen, it doesn't have it doesn't say like, thank you, Michelle. So it's not like you can print that and take it to the school and say, this was specifically for me, and here's my confirmation. And the school doesn't have to accept that anyway, because the law says no exemption form, no enrollment.
That's right.
So we did finally pass that. It met with so much opposition in both the House and the Senate, and on the floor. It was just such an absurd amount of attention being paid to a form, a piece of paper. It's even more useless in preventing infectious disease than a mask. It is such a waste of taxpayer resources. It is a burden on the parent or the person trying to exempt themselves. And let's be very clear, the vaccine choice is a right in Texas. It is established that we have the right to decline vaccinations, but this process is requiring us to request this right from a bureaucratic agency. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't promote public health. All it does is make it more inconvenient for us, in the hopes that we will give up and just say, never mind, I'll vaccinate my kids.
And I want to just go back a little bit to provide a little bit of history on this. That bill was passed in the early 2000s. I mean, the internet was still kind of in its infancy. I can see why that made sense 25 years ago, but I just am like, okay, 1995 called and wants their hard copy mailed process back. And I'll tell you, to your point, Michelle, every time I hit submit on that portal on the health department's website, I'm always, in my mind, I say, if it pleases the Queen, may I please have my forms to opt my children out of optional medical procedures? I mean, it's so dumb. There should not be this bureaucratic hoop, a significant time delayed hoop that parents have to jump through simply to exercise their very, very obvious God-given and state-sanctioned rights here.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of quell any unrest amongst TFEC supporters. We did have a plan to amend this bill on the floor so that you wouldn't have to notarize this form anymore, and that it would be available in nurses' offices in case you don't have a printer like me. And ultimately, the decision was made very in the moment decision on the floor when we were running out of time, and Democrats were obviously getting very ruffled. And this was a bill that they just did not want to see passed. Ultimately, the decision was made to pull those amendments and just get this passed cleanly. And, we can add those provisions in later sessions. But once we get this done, it's far easier to chip away at the other requirements.
This was a leap, just a significant leap in making that process completely far simpler. And I just want to speak to the opposition that's like, the sky is falling and everybody's going to die because your mom can print a form now, right? Um, there are other states in this nation that don't require this process, right? I mean, there's some states that a parent could just write a note
Write a
on
note.
this napkin and turn it in. And so it's so disingenuous for them to say, everybody's going to die of measles because your mom can print a form, when we have states where this has been the process for decades. And look what has happened.
Right.
Nothing. Nothing. Okay, so we have beat the 1586 horse to death.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Okay, so the little bill that could, House Bill 3441 by Representative Shelley Luther. If you talk to her about it, she'll tell you she didn't expect it to go very far. We were kind of like, this is a great idea, but there's absolutely no way that it's going to pass. 3441 basically says any vaccine manufacturer who advertises their products in the state of Texas assumes liability for those products. As you know, as many of you know, and you should know, in 1986, the federal government gave these vaccine manufacturers almost blanket immunity against liability for injuries and deaths resulting from their vaccines. Vaccines only. This does not apply to any other drug that hits the market, anything like that. So she found a way to circumvent that law. She said she was sitting on the couch with her husband watching the Super Bowl. It was just like pharmaceutical commercial after pharmaceutical commercial. Travis Kelce promoting, get both the COVID and the flu shots. So it just came to her then, and she filed it. And her chief of staff was like, it's very clunky, but we can work on the language. And then out of nowhere, Chairman Jeff Leach gave the bill a hearing, very unexpected. It didn't garner any opposition in the House. I think only one person testified against it in the Senate. It was kind of this lightning in a bottle bill. And when it did hit the House floor, it was the first and only bill that Shelley Luther authored and passed. So it was her first bill, and typically you have a lot of hazing for freshmen, but people were just like in awe of what she was able to do. The bill was one vote short of getting 2/3 majority in the House, which if it gets 2/3 in both chambers, then it becomes effective immediately. It doesn't have to wait for the governor's signature. It's great. But I think we need to recognize how far we've come, that 99 members of the House, all Republicans who were there and voting, plus, a dozen or so Democrats voted in favor of this bill. That's huge, huge. And so that is headed to the governor's desk. We're very excited to see that get through. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that at all, or we can just move on to the next bill.
Let's move on to the next bill.
House Bill 4076 by Chairman Jeff Leach protects organ transplant patients from being denied care or deprioritized in care based solely on their vaccination status. Again, this is a small step in the right direction, a small but mighty step in the right direction. I don't know if you recall, but in 2023, when we passed House Bill 44 to prohibit Medicaid and CHIP providers from discriminating against patients based on vaccination status, we had to do a carve out. In order to get the bill passed, we had to carve out organ transplant patients. And so this bill being passed means that little carve out is no longer in play. So the unethical behavior on the part of some of these practitioners who are saying, like, you need to be further down the list, or, this child is 1 year old and needs a heart transplant in the next 1 or 2 years. And by the time that child is 18 months old, they have to be caught up on COVID and COVID boosters. I mean, it's preposterous. And it's like, so just, it's gross behavior, in my opinion, on behalf of these doctors to deny life-saving care to Texans.
I want to make it very clear to our listeners that this is a very real problem currently happening in our state. It's one of the I would say in the top 3 or 4 phone calls that we get here in TFEC is about transplant and vaccination status. And I want to echo what you said. This is an absolute stain on our state that this unethical behavior is allowed, this unethical discrimination. It's nothing but discrimination. And I loved what Chairman Leach said from the front mic when he was getting a little pushback from the back mic from the Democrats. And he just laid it out and said, if you think that life-saving organ transplants patients should be denied care based on vaccination status, vote against my bill.
Yep.
Go on record saying that you support this unethical practice. And the Democrats did. And yeah.
He wasn't having it.
No,
there was
he
not
wasn't.
going to be any of this like whataboutism from the back mic. He was just very straightforward. No one should be denied life-saving care based solely on their vaccination status. And that is 100% true. I mean, we're not promoting disease. All we are doing here is saying that every life deserves care. So, moving on, the next bill that passed through the House was House Bill 4535, another small but great step forward. This is by Representative John McQueenie, another freshman. This bill would basically says that the Department of State Health Services needs to come up with this new informed consent form specifically for the COVID vaccine. And using one of your favorite words, it is a robust informed consent form. So it has to include information about VAERS. It has to include information about risks. And because of an amendment tacked on the House floor, it also has to have information about benefits, which you're already getting. If you go to the doctor, they already have to give you that form. But it also has to talk about the rush rollout, the lack of safety and efficacy testing. So it's really giving you true informed consent on this particular vaccination. So I think it's a great step forward. Again, it passed the House and the Senate. It's on its way to being signed by the governor. We were just, happy to see it pass. Would love to see this expand in the future, but we have time to do that.
And I want to make it clear, yes, this bill only pertains to the COVID jabs, and it's 2025. If somebody's still showing up for their COVID boosters, they're probably informed consent is probably they're bought in, right? But what's great about bills like this is that they can absolutely be kind of a launching pad for bigger bills. We have some good informed consent now codified, hopefully with Abbott's signature. And so we are, these are stepping stone in the right direction for sure. Okay, what else?
Senate Bill 269 by Senator Charles Perry, carried on the House side by Chairman James Frank. It says that all experimental use and experimental and emergency use authorization vaccines must have side effects reported to VAERS. Physicians must report those side effects. Now, it only applies to vaccines that fit into those categories. So not your routine childhood immunizations, but it's again a step in the right direction, and it gets the conversation started with physicians. It opens their eyes to the fact that VAERS exists, that these vaccine injuries exist, and they may be more prompted to go to the VAERS website because they have to report there anyway. Go to the VAERS website, see what typical injuries look like for these particular vaccines, and then it gives us much more data to go off of as far as, this post-market surveillance that we're doing as guinea pigs for these emergency use authorization vaccines. So that passed, and I think that got over 100 votes in the House. So we're reaching this point, this kind of critical mass. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there, as evidenced by the 99 votes for Shelley Luther's bill and the over 100 votes for this bill in the House. And then the final success that we had was Senate Joint Resolution 34. That was by Chairman Brian Hughes in the Senate, carried by Chairman James Frank in the House. This is a proposition. So this will be on the November ballot. It will be an amendment to the state constitution enumerating that parents have a right to direct the upbringing of their children. So this basically says that the state cannot, under most circumstances, interfere with a medical, educational, etc. decision that you're making as a parent for your minor child. There are very limited, exceptions to this, obviously, because the state does have an interest in protecting children from abuse or neglect. But this, again, will be on the ballot in November. And so TFEC will be working to support, to educate people about the fact that there is a November election this year and that you should vote in favor of SJR 34.
Very good. All right. Do we want to kind of pivot to, I don't know, I guess this would be the ugly of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The missed opportunities might be the more kosher way to phrase it. So let's talk about the things that died, that sadly died, died on the vine. I know.
The common theme you'll see here is that all but one of these bills died in the House Public Health Committee. Now, to his credit, Chairman Van Dever did help us pass some good legislation, but there were some definite big misses. So the one that comes top of mind is House Bill 3219 by Representative Joanne Schaffner. It's top of mind because of two things. It died on the floor on the night that the House bills had a deadline. The House could no longer consider House bills for passage after midnight. We were 7 bills away from House Bill 3219, and it didn't get there in time.
And then midnight struck. So tell us what that bill would have done.
That is very simple, and many other states have already adopted this, but it would say that you can get ivermectin from a pharmacist without a physician prescription or a physician order. So it's not on the shelf over the counter. It would be behind the shelf. Pharmacists would be dispensing it, but you don't have to go to see a doctor and get a prescription for it. You can just access it yourself, and it's human grade, and it would have dosing information. So you're not going to the feed store and getting the horse paste. So it's a win for Texas patients to easily prevent some very common ailments. But it died. And the other reason that it's top of mind is that yesterday I was going through all the public comments that people left for the bills that we supported or opposed. The House allows people from across the state to just leave their online comments, which is a great way to get involved without having to leave your home. House Bill 3219 overwhelmingly had far more comments than any other bill that we were tracking this session. It was, I think, 600 something comments, nearly 60 pages of online comments with only 2 opposing the bill. Texans want this. It's very, very clear that Texans want this, and standing in the way of it it's a crime. I mean, I think it's so silly. It was such a simple, but very good bill, very strong bill. So that's House Bill 3219. There were 2 bills that came over from the Senate that kind of went together as far as one of our priority goals. Senate Bill 407 by Senator Mays Middleton and Senate Bill 2119 by Senator Kevin Sparks. These bills would have driven the nail in the coffin of vaccine mandates for healthcare students and healthcare workers. So Senate Bill 407 specifically said that healthcare facilities must accept reasons of conscience exemptions. Currently, they may, but they don't have to. It's not a shall. This just switched it over to shall and said that they cannot deny it for any reason. Senate Bill 2119 said that it further codified the right of students who are entering into human health care courses of study or veterinary care courses of study, that they can exempt themselves from vaccine requirements. And the vaccine requirements are pretty long, potential vaccine requirements. This is another email that we get on a regular basis is I was denied the opportunity to enter into nursing school or nurse anesthesiology or into my clinical rotations or what have you, because the school is saying that I have to get a COVID vaccine or a flu vaccine or whatever. It's already in law.
even I'm missing one MMR, or I'm
Right.
missing I mean, it is just, it really is one of the chief phone calls that we get
Right.
here.
Right. And it is already in law. And I'll touch on that in a little bit, but it's already in education code that these students get exemptions. However, the Department of State Health Services took it upon themselves to adopt rules that conflict with state law. So both of these bills passed through the Senate and then never got a hearing on the House side. Now, going back to education code, we did have one senator, Senator Kelly Hancock, who was extremely helpful in the background in getting a determination from the deputy commissioner of the Department of State Health Services saying, actually, yeah, you're right. Our rules do conflict with state law. These students do have a right to exempt themselves from vaccine requirements, but we'll change the rules when we get a chance, is essentially what the letter says. We do have a copy of that letter. We're more than happy to provide it to students who are having some barriers to entry at these higher education campuses. But ultimately, until the rules are changed, these schools can easily just fall back on that rule and say that you cannot submit an exemption to this requirement. So we've still got a lot of work to do in that area, but we are relentless on that. And I want to thank Senators Middleton and Sparks, as well as Representatives Schaffner and Leo Wilson, for just prioritizing this and trying so hard to get this across the finish line.
Yeah, their efforts are valiant. And I just want to highlight this student bill for 1 second, because there's this shortage of medical providers that truly believe in patient-centered care, that want to provide, what informed consent, what a concept, right? And so by having these very oppressive mandates out of the gate, I mean, you can't even go into school for being an X-ray tech or a sonographer or anything like EMT without these vaccines. That's a pretty long laundry list of jabs. And so the entire system in Texas is set up to be kind of this self-perpetuating problem where, these kids that might want to, really make a difference and provide this care every step of the way, starting from step one, they are forced to comply. I talked to a doctor a couple of months ago who said, I had to comply to get into school. I had to comply with my first clinical, again, my first internship. I mean, like, by the time he got fully out, he's an orthopedic surgeon. He had to consent to 4 or 5 rounds of vaccines in that short amount of time, from entering medical school to fully, getting, I don't know what that step is. It's not graduating, but like when you're like, okay, go practice medicine. I mean, it's probably like a 12-year process, and he had to consent to multiple rounds of vaccines. So by the time you're out, you have just been trained to comply and consent. And so
you
it's
apply that then to your patients.
Yeah, exactly.
So another bill that came out of the Senate, and you'll notice a trend here of these great bills coming out of the Senate, Senate Bill 95 by Senator Bob Hall, who, if you've been following TFVC for even a minute, you know that Bob Hall is a champion. This is one of his priority areas, policy areas, is medical liberty. So we love working with his office and him, and we know that his heart is big for this. Senate Bill 95, again, is very simple. It's currently in family code, state family code, which is state law. It says that it is the parent's responsibility to ensure that they receive informed consent from a physician before their child is administered vaccines. So the onus is on the parent. It is not on the physician. He flips it in this bill, Senate Bill 95, and says that the physician is required to provide this informed consent. It passed out of the Senate. I won't say it passed out very easily, but it passed out of the Senate early enough to get through the House. It just didn't get a hearing. I believe it was carried on the House side by Representative Cody Harris. His office communicated with me that they tried to get a hearing. It just never happened. Senate Bill 125, which is something that we've been helping to work on for 2 sessions now, would codify the right of patients in Texas to designate a known blood donor or to be your own blood donor in the event of a planned transfusion or need for a blood donation. So one of the common questions that we get at public speaking events is, do you know where, are there any blood banks that test or ask about whether or not you've gotten the COVID vaccine? And to our knowledge, there isn't such a questionnaire. There's not a screener for that, but this would be a way around that. You would be able to say, like, I know this person has not gotten an mRNA injection. I would rather their blood come in, go into my body than this like banked blood full of anonymous donors. You would be shocked at the amount of opposition that was mounted against this bill. I had no idea until Liz James from Blessed by His Blood came to us for looking for some help. I had no idea the industry that surrounds blood donations. This is a multi-million-dollar industry. The CEO of the blood bank that showed up to oppose this bill herself makes $1 million or, 900 something $1,000 a year, but she's doing it altruistically. Right. So it's it's disturbing on some levels, the amount of opposition. I think that the people that showed up to support this bill did an amazing job of giving personal experiences. There's a couple of sisters who were adopted from China who have a very rare blood disorder, and they don't make their own blood, so they rely on transfusions to stay alive, and they want this opportunity to say that this is the kind of blood that I want. This is a perfect match for us, and we want that blood. They've been denied, and so it's becoming very costly for them. So anyways, this was a bill that just didn't make it out in time. And then I think the final miss that we have on our list is Senate Bill 315. This did not go through the Public Health Committee. This went through Trade, Workforce, and Economic Development, which is not a committee that we work with a lot. But this was on the Senate side was authored by Chairwoman Lois Kolkhorst and then carried by Representative Caroline Harris-Davila in the House. Again, very simple bill, says that you have a property right to your own DNA. So nobody can sell it, nobody can alter it, nobody can modify it without your full written informed consent. So it just did not get out of committee in time to make it to a vote on the floor. But those were our kind of missed opportunities that provide a template for where we can start from in the 90th.
Oh my word.
The 90th legislative session in 2027.
I do want to highlight one other bill that died, and that was, I think it was a Senate Bill 2422 that would have reined in those just completely unchecked powers of our Texas Medical Board. So why don't you unpack why that bill is needed?
So I think everyone is familiar with the story of Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, who has been persecuted by the Texas Medical Board. She is hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars into a legal dispute with the TMB over her right to provide individualized care to patients during the COVID pandemic. The headline story that she was involved in was a patient, and forgive me, I don't remember his name, who was in the hospital suffering from severe COVID, and the courts intervened and said that Dr. Bowden could provide ivermectin in the hospital. The hospital then removed her privileges and basically began persecuting her through the Texas Medical Board. And they have been relentless in their pursuit against her because she is so vocal about ivermectin, about mandates. So she has become kind of a central figure in this fight, but she is not alone. Dr. Estella Emanuel also was persecuted by the Texas Medical Board along with other doctors. This is nothing new, and it's not exclusive to pandemic era action. So 2422 basically puts them in check and says that they have to take some responsibility for the bad actors in their agency. And the hearing on the Senate side it's worth going back and watching that because the senators in the Health and Human Services Committee, particularly Senator Perry, they did not hold back. They brought up as kind of a surprise the attorney from the Texas Medical Board to sit alongside Dr. Bowden. And they pointedly asked them both questions and basically was like, they were like, can you deny anything that Dr. Bowden is saying that you did? And he couldn't. So it was a very revealing hearing, and it passed through the Senate, died in the House Public Health Committee.
Yeah.
So
my favorite part of that hearing was when Senator Perry, in his disgust, basically reading.
pen.
Yeah, he threw his pen across the hearing table, and I was like, that pin toss, sign me up for more of that,
Right.
Senator Perry. It was incredible.
That one toss of the pen, he was speaking for so many Texans who are just so disgusted by this behavior. So they were, and even, Senator Blanco, who's a Democrat serving on that committee, was like, they've gone well beyond what they're intending. They were intended to do. So there is some reckoning there that's coming. It didn't come this session, but I'm hoping there are some interim charges there.
There you go. I was texting a little bit with Dr. Bowden immediately after that hearing, and she was like, "Oh my word, did that just happen?" Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and I said, "Dr. Bowden, this is why we love Chairwoman Course, because she's just like, let's just blow it all up right now. Bring up the attorney, bring up Dr. Bowden. Let's do this right here." It was a moment.
So unprecedented. Dr. Bowden's sitting there and she makes a statement, and Chairwoman Colcourse basically holds up her finger and says, "Hold on, let's bring up the Texas Medical Board representative." And we're all like, let's do what? Like, what is happening here? Because he wasn't signed up he wasn't registered to speak, so she just kind of called him up out of nowhere. And thank goodness she did, because that was it was a historic moment. Loved it.
For sure.
So I want to talk about why you were not with me on the last day that House bills could be considered in the House for the biennial celebration in the gallery of the clock hitting midnight, and Chairman Moody going up to the back mic and saying, "Aren't we on El Paso time?" Why did you miss that?
It is a very important deadline in the House, and it is very exciting to be there in the gallery. I mean, because they really do work up until midnight, and it's just kind of things get, everybody kind of gets punch drunk because it's getting super late and everybody's jockeying for their bills, and it's just really exciting. And I wanted no more than to be there with you to experience all the shenanigans, right? And that date was May 15th, when the clock struck midnight on May 15th is when all that crucial deadline was met. I was not there because Texans for Vaccine Choice was hosting the world premiere of Follow the Silence, the documentary that Texans for Vaccine Choice is proud executive producers on. And it's just was a unfortunate coincidence that both things were happening on the same night. And I just want to commend Michelle for saying, you know what, I can't leave. I can't leave as much as I want to go hang out at the Bob Bullock Museum for this truly historic evening. I've got to deal with my own historic evening in the Texas House. So thank you for taking one for the team, Michelle. For full disclosure, we did get to go, Michelle and I did get to go to LA for the Santa Monica Film Festival when this documentary was kind of pre-screened there in March. So I don't feel so bad. You did get to go to LA, and,
Listen, being in the gallery at midnight is more my speed. So,
I mean, let's be clear. This is a policy walk through and through. And so storming LA with you was a lot of fun. Having the Austin premiere, I'll tell you, this whole documentary, things I did not have on my TFEC nonprofit bingo card, going to LA, winning these awards at the film festival in Santa Monica for best director, best of festival, and then fast forwarding, hosting this world premiere in May in Austin. It was just so it was just a moment for the movement. I thought we had some really great people show up. We had Tim Kennedy there. We had Zachary
Zachary
Levi,
Levi.
who is just the most genuine human you will ever meet. It was just really cool to see him just show up like a normal guy, not expecting any, special treatment, and watch him, really share his heart for the movement. It was very special. JP Sears was there, Del Bigtree and his sweet wife Lee. Um, who else? Obviously, Mickey Willis and the entire Elevate Films crew were there, and the React 19, the injured that represent React 19. So many came from very far away. We had people come from Canada, even. Somebody flew in from uh, somewhere in Europe for it as well, and so it was just really kind of this. Uh, I just don't even know. I'm really without words. It was just a really special moment. Our heart for this, the goal of this evening was to ensure that the injured felt heard, platformed, honored, believed, and I just gave myself goosebumps and all of the feedback that I got from the React 19 representatives was that we have gone to a lot of events, but not one compares to what we just experienced in Austin at the Bob Bullock Museum. So I just hope and pray that they truly felt honored, and just a week after the Austin premiere, I got to go to DC with the React 19 kind of core group for a congressional screening of the documentary as well. And it coincided with this Senate hearing as well. There is just no bigger national treasure than Senator Ron Johnson in the vaccine choice movement and the vaccine safety movement. And so he had called a hearing of his committee in talking about the colluding of government agencies to really cover up the injuries from the COVID vaccines. And so to be able to be in that front row right behind these heroes, we had 4 doctors, we had Aaron Siri, and getting their truth on the record, it was the honor of a lifetime to be there. Honestly, I got to tee up with the witnesses in the little ante room. I sound very fancy saying ante room, I know, and then file out with them and to be there to support them. It was just really special. And then that evening was the screening, and that auditorium where we screened the movie was packed with just very high level congressional staffers, senatorial staffers, even some people from the executive branch were there as well, along with a lot of these just kind of key figures in this like kind of auxiliary MAHA movement that's taking place in DC. So it was just a really great opportunity to make great connections, to see kind of what the lay of the land is federally as well. It's funny. We have, in our 10 years of existence, this federal government has been, mostly irrelevant to our state level fight. And so it's just really, I'm hopeful about how this kind of new era of HHS and the federal agencies in charge of this issue how it's going to impact these state level movements. And some really great connections were made. But, this movie really, if y'all have not seen Follow the Silence, you need to go to our website. There's a big blue banner right at the top that says watch Follow the Silence. It is well worth the watch. It is just an incredible masterpiece of a documentary. And I know that you're like me, Michelle. We've watched every vaccine documentary there is, right? And what's so different about this one, and I really want to commend Matthew Guthrie and Tyler Lindsay, the directors and editors of this, because they are just, their heart for humanity just shines so bright in this movie. And what makes this documentary especially different is it goes through the COVID response. And that is a collective experience that all humanity, we all went through that together. All these other vaccine documentaries, if you haven't been completely impacted by this XYZ vaccine, it's just going to kind of fall on deaf ears potentially. But this one, everybody collectively experienced the just massive overreach of big pharma and governments during the COVID response. And so this has the potential to really reach more people on just the corruption and the fallout that the injured suffered because nobody really cared about them. And it's unfortunate and it's despicable and it's criminal and it's evil. And I could use all the adjectives, but it is an honor of a lifetime to work alongside some of these people that are really trying to institute long-term, federal change on the Vaccine Injury and the PrEP Act and the shortcomings of those.
Well, and I think that kind of underscores this underlying kind of feel, this vibe that started in January and continues now. We passed 6 bills. We premiered this film. We had a piece in the New York Times, for Pete's sake. Like, it feels like this movement, not our movement, but this overarching movement, this medical liberty movement, this vaccine skepticism, vaccine safety focus, it's really starting to reach a point where it can no longer be ignored. It is being heard. It's part of mainstream conversation. People are talking about it in polite circles now. So it's, we talk a lot about the kind of silver linings of the COVID pandemic. And we've also said from the beginning that it's going to take adult mandates to really change the conversation. And we were correct. We were spot on. Things have changed. Things have improved for, the people who believe wholeheartedly in vaccine choice, informed consent, and medical privacy. Things have changed for the better. We do have a long way to go, and we are relentless in our pursuit of making it so that your vaccination status is completely irrelevant to your participation in society. We will get there. It will take at least another 10 years. But at some point, Rebecca and I are going to work ourselves out of a job.
That's our goal, right? But shut your mouth that it's going to take 10 years. But yes, we are relentless and we are working diligently to work ourselves out of jobs. But we're not even remotely there yet. We are making headway. But to your point, I just want to make one comment. And that is that, I just don't want our listeners, our followers, our supporters, what have you, to think that, because RFK is in office, like we can just sit back and relax. I mean, this is a states' right issue by and large, right? 99% of this policy is set in Austin for Texans and in your state capital for anybody that's listening in another state. And so this is an opportunity, a moment in history that we will never get back, and we best not squander it. I mean, now is the time, pedal to the metal. I mean, we have been literally not literally, we have figuratively been pushing this boulder up the mountain for 10 years. And there's been plenty of people been, pushing the boulder for far longer than that. And for once, the momentum is on our side. The wind is at our back. So we have got to just double down on our efforts. And I just want to encourage everybody to find your voice, find your role, lock arms with us, because we understand the assignment and we will not squander this responsibility because it's a big one.
And I also want to let people know that some of the progress that is made in the state capitol is made in silence. What you see is the end result, this bill that passes, or this suite of bills that pass. What you don't see is lawmakers working with TFEC to try to make these bills as strong as is humanly possible. Believe me when I say that these bills that were very narrowly tailored, there were so many attempts to get them to be more expansive, to be broader, to kind of push us even further in the right direction. But we do need to understand that we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. We are making great progress between the 5 bills passed in 2023, the 6 bills passed this session. We are in such a unique and strong position to continue to build on this. Once we get one policy passed, it's much easier to go back and strengthen that policy in a later session than it is to try to pass something that's more whole hog. But I want to let you know, we do try for the whole hog every single time, because there's no reason. The worst thing that they can say is no, right? And at least we have them on record as saying no. But we do try, and we'll continue to try. And with your support, your prayers, your time, your energy, your resources, we will continue to accomplish great things in the state of Texas.
And with that, I think that's a great place to end.
Yep.
Thank you, Michelle. And we'll see you next time on our next episode.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.